one is the same times in our lives. We've all been down, pushed too much around, learning to move along. Well, I'm gonna get on the subject of specifics of my dad's violence. I've been talking about things more broad terms, but one of the earliest memories I have of my dad and his violence directed towards me was when he would punish us. He always liked to use his belt. Well, most of the time, maybe not always, but often. And you got punished over things that didn't even warrant the magnitude of the punishment to be physical. And most of the time, you weren't even really doing anything that warranted discipline. And my dad just had this very explosive temper. So you didn't even have to be doing anything wrong. He was just on edge or in a bad mood. I still don't understand him. But anyhow, so one of the earliest memories I have was I was probably, I'm going to have to guess my age on this. I was probably around maybe 7 or 8. And we were living at these apartment complex. And my older brother, who's just a year and a half older than me, him and my younger brother, who was still in his crib at the time, he was a toddler, they shared a bedroom. I had my own bedroom because I was the only girl. So the two boys had a bedroom. And then my parents, of course, had their bedroom. All I remember was it was nighttime. I was already in bed. I was asleep. And I can't remember if it was my mom or my dad, but I think it was my mom came in and woke me up. And she was carrying my younger brother in her arms. And she said, "You need to get up. Just get up. Come on." I don't remember exactly what she said. So I get up and walk down the short hallway to my brother's bedroom, and my dad's in there, and apparently he was just yelling and screaming and was hitting my older brother with the belt. And when he does it, you lay on your stomach and pull your pants down, and he spank and he beats you on your bare bottom with the belt, which is really fucked up. And like I've said before, I was never sexually abused, and I'm pretty confident neither were my brothers. So that was weird about the bare bottom element, considering the sexual abuse. But anyhow, so I'm like, keep in mind, I'm like 7 years old, thereabouts. And evidently, my older brother, under his bed, apparently was, God, it's amazing how much you can remember, a roll of wallpaper, and I remember it had distinctly had this brick print on it, to look like red brick. And my dad was holding the wallpaper. It was a roll, just a small roll. And he's like, "Do you know how this got under your brother's bed?" And I'm just like, I didn't even know we had the roll of brick wallpaper. Not really mattered, but I'm like, no. And he's, well, one of you two are lying to me. Evidently, my brother said I put it under his bed because he didn't do it. And we knew my younger brother was too young to do that. So my older brother said I must have done it. I don't even know how my dad found it. It was weird. I don't even know how he came across it. So, well, my dad, in his fashion, says, well, until one of you tells me who put it there, I'm going to punish you both. So I had to lay on my stomach on the bed, on the edge of the bed, my pants down, next to my brother, and he continued and proceeded to beat us both with the belt. Till one of us confessed, and I was like, I don't know anything. I didn't put it there. I didn't know, never seen it before. And this went on for, I don't know if this went on for a couple minutes or 10 minutes, probably maybe for several, I don't know. And then my brother finally confessed that he put it there. I'm just told to go back to bed. So I go back to bed, in pain, severely traumatized, crying. And mind you, when he was beating us, my mom was standing in the doorway of that bedroom holding Adam. She said nothing and she did nothing. I remember that very clearly. And I've held strong contempt and dislike towards my mother and some hate ever since that day. And it grew worse from there. But that's where that first seed was planted. And then I could hear him beating my brother. I could hear him, not saying my brother's names, just for the sake of privacy. And I could hear my brother crying and begging my dad to stop, and my dad just screaming and yelling and, don't lie to me, don't you ever lie to me again, and continued to beat him. And it was horrible hearing that, in addition to my own pain and severe trauma from it. But like I said in my other videos, I'm 57, and I can remember that very vividly. And, there's never my mom didn't come into my bedroom and console me at all, or, while that went on, or even afterwards or later that evening. I just cried myself to sleep, and the next day it's just everything's back to normal. You have to survive another day. So that was the wallpaper, the brick wallpaper story. And that was the beginning of many other fucked up, surreal, horrific things that came from my dad's violence, and just like a monster inside him. Who does that to their kids, So yeah, that PTSD started young, before that even, but that's like the youngest memory I have of severe trauma and behest at the hands of my own father. And like I said, my mom lacks empathy, and I've mentioned that in another video. And she's been like that my whole life. And as an adult, when I brought that story up to her one time, Wow, and that was probably about 18 years ago. Because where we live now, we moved here 16 years ago. And I remember talking to her about it at this place we were renting for a couple of years before we moved here. So yeah, I'd say probably about 18 years ago, I confronted her on the phone about it because she was bringing up some stuff basically about the relationship with my father and us kids and the lack of and yada, yada, yada. And I can remember my mom saying, because she never, ever, ever wanted to talk about the past and any wrongdoings. And but somehow we got on the subject, and I mentioned, about Dad, and kind of we were talking vaguely, and I think she asked me a question, and her excuse, which pains me, not excuse, but her line is, well, things weren't all bad. It wasn't all bad times. There were good times too. She has. You know how painful that is to hear? So I brought up the story of the wallpaper, and her response to that was, "You remember that? I thought you were too young to remember that." Again, no remorse. She was shocked that I remembered it. She thought it was too young. I loved my mother, and I say past tense because she passed away from cancer. Gosh, it'll be 2 years this December 26th of 2021, so it's 2019. I loved my mother, but I didn't like her. I had a ton of resentment towards her. She could never understand why we couldn't be close. She wanted so bad to have a close relationship with me, and both my brothers, but me, I guess, because I was the only girl. And she could never understand why we could never be close. It's because I didn't respect her and I didn't like her, but not just because of things that took place over many years, but because she was also a terrible role model. Really, really bad role model. And not because she drank or smoked or, drinking like normal people as far as like New Year's Eve and holidays. But like she wasn't an alcoholic. She didn't drink socially at home. I just couldn't connect with her because I harbored a lot of the resentment, but also because I didn't like her as a person, her personality. I found her very disgusting a lot of times because she had very poor social habits, very, very, very poor social skills with people. She would annoy just about anybody she met. My mom just had that way about her. And I wanted so desperately to never be like her. I look like both my parents. Some people say I look just like my mom. Some people say I look just like my dad. So I just chalk it up to I look like both of them. I don't fucking act like them. Maybe some little traits here and there, some of the good stuff. But, yeah, so... And my parents wondered why us kids never want to spend time visiting. Or when we would go to the house for any kind of holiday or social. Why were we always in such a hurry to leave? Oh, you just come to eat and you're out the door. It didn't matter how long you stayed. They always would say that. I'm like, okay, we finished eating dinner 4 hours ago. I want to go home. Always this guilt trip shit. And that's when we lived, that's when we lived like, at one point we lived 15 minutes from them, but most of the time it was half hour, 45 minutes. But I'm talking before they moved to Florida. And my brothers lived close enough, it was a close drive, local. And they always wondered. And I can remember always getting knots in my stomach anytime I knew we had to go visit them for something. But anyhow, I'm sorry I tend to ramble and rant sometimes, but so that was a introduction to how violent my dad could really be and why I grew up in fear every day of my life. Since I was old enough to remember, far back, I'm sure as a baby, as an infant, I was probably scared of him too, because I would probably hear the yelling and the screaming. But, and then to go from a home where I was scared all the time and felt like I had to be always perfect and on my best behavior around my dad. Always being cautious, whatever I'd say or do around my dad. Only to have to go to school, public schools, to be bullied by kids because I was a little ragamuffin. I didn't brush my hair. I was just a fucking ugly duckling of a kid. I was extremely socially awkward. I was so introvert. So not socially awkward like my mom, who's always putting her foot in her mouth saying the wrong thing. I was painfully introvert. So I was an easy target between my looks and not having the confidence to stick up for myself. I was a punching bag for anybody. And so I would go from one battleground that I lived in to a battleground at school. And especially it was really bad. Well, even in elementary school up until around, I want to say around 3rd or 4th grade is when I really started getting bullied bad. Before that, I was still a cute kind of little kid, but then, went downhill from there. And junior high. But then high school, a little bit, but not as much. Junior high was the worst. And so I got riding on the bus, being at school, whatever. So I just go from one shitty fucking hostile environment to another. So the only time I felt really carefree and I could let my guard down and enjoy life as a kid was when I wasn't around my dad. So when he was at work, before he'd get home. And then obviously when I wasn't in the house, when I was outside playing with the neighborhood kids. So basically just not being around him, I felt like I could enjoy life. And I had a hard time learning in school because I was a nervous fucking wreck. Because of all the shit at home was turning me into just a painfully traumatized kid that couldn't cope with any kind of negativity or hostility or criticism or judgment so learning, having the focus while you're in the classroom to absorb information, to retain it so when you took your test you could do well and that got especially hard for me. Well, anyhow, it made it really hard. In addition to the bullying and the normal peer pressure that we all go through on top of everything else. And I never told anybody about the shit that was going on at home. I told no one. Oh, the whole fucking neighborhood and the neighbors knew. At that point, we lived in a townhouse. We were in the apartments, so of course everyone knew then. But then we moved to a townhouse and we were there a long time. So the whole fucking neighborhood knew about the highly dysfunctional home where the police pull up frequently because my mom or dad are having a full blown out screaming, yelling match, punching the walls. So we had definitely neighbors call the police multiple times. And back then, nobody would get arrested because my dad was not physically hurting my mom, but they were screaming and yelling and punching the walls and shit. And so yeah, so I was that kid that grew up in the fucked up house. I had the crazy people. Anyhow, more my bullshit crap stories to share with you. So, peace.
We all have pain. Not one is the same times in our lives.